Am I on? Oh gosh. Okay, I hope I'm on. Hello guys. I'm actually just going to assume I'm on. I think it's always better just to assume. But I can assure you, it's a tough gig getting this stuff done, this live process done. So if you're there, love it if you could say hello. That would give me the confidence there actually is someone there. Actually, I can see there are. Let me have a quick look. Sally and Amanda and Bella. I can't see if anyone's on Facebook, so I hope you're on there as well. Look, it's actually such a torrid time, isn't it, in the world right now? And I was thinking that, especially we're living in Perth, I'm living in Perth, Western Australia, and I guess a lot of the people who jump on today will be Perth, Western Australia, or at least in Australia. And for us, when we hear about COVID and the implication, it tends to be, that we have lockdowns that are keeping us all safe while we're waiting for the vaccinations to happen. And then we know that gradually our country will need to open up. But for this period of time, we can all live, I'll just see if I can straighten that a little bit. We can all live with a really a fantastic lifestyle. And we know that we've got so many protective nets and safety nets. But, in the developing world, that really isn't the case. And I find it just, sometimes so extraordinary to think about how different life can be, depending on where we find ourselves located. So Foxglove Project works with women in the developing world, and we have projects in Rwanda, India, and Cambodia. And those projects help, what we believe in is that, poverty is a systemic and a cyclical thing. And where do you try to break the cycle? So we could try to break the cycle sometimes when people are older. They'll try to be in that. Sometimes we'll identify to try and break the cycle with children. But Foxglove works out where can we do what we do best. And what we do is say, we're going to try and break the cycle with the women, with the mothers, have them provide for their children, and not only provide for them, but model for their children. Independence and self-sufficiency and, growth and independence and decision-making and all the things that you've got to do to take care of yourself, with the belief that maybe it's going to be generational change, but that change will happen over time. So it's been such a fantastic opportunity for me. I mean, I've totally loved doing what I do for Foxglove. If you don't know what Foxglove means, project, I do like to say this any time I talk to people, is that Foxglove is actually a flower, and I'm not girly in many ways, but I'm really girly about flowers. I just love them, and they're so beautiful. So I wanted a name of a flower, but the Foxglove flower is this really unique flower because it's got 4 qualities that I think we want to reproduce as people of Foxglove. The first one is it shelters other plants in the garden. So it's this idea, it's this sheltering quality. Second thing about it is that it's hardy and resilient, and we know that we have to be, and the women's developing world have to be. Thirdly, it's self-sowing. So it's this whole idea about it's sustainable. And then finally, it's got a property that treats the heart. What a fantastic thought, not only does it treat people's heart, but it comes from the heart. And so that's the story of Foxglove. And maybe, those thoughts are really, and those words are really powerful at this time of this COVID pandemic, because we are contacting our partners across the world and saying to them, what is happening? How can we best help? And I just want to let you know what is happening, and how can we best help is actually quite varied. So the 3 countries are actually in quite different situations. I'd love you to send in questions, because otherwise, I could rabbit here for the next 30 minutes. So let me see, is anyone coming up with any questions? Oh, hello. I just love seeing all the names come up, it's really fantastic. Natalie's there. Natalie Roberts, a youth there in Kenya. How good is that? And Christy's there too. Hi, Christy. So let me just tell you what actually Natalie's one of the people who's on the Instagram, is actually runs an organisation in Kenya in quite a remote area and works with children and different demographics, is actually looking to anti-malaria treatment. So Nets. So Christy's also online, and they've got a new organisation. The project's called Nets for Nights. Nights for Nets?
No, it's Nights.
I always get that bit wrong, but you guys know what I mean. It's about nets and nights, and they're doing a fantastic job with treatment for children. So let me just go to the countries that we're working with. So I'll start with India, and maybe we'll start with India because, of course, we're watching the news. And remember, we've got a country over there, a nation of 1.3 billion people. not only that country, which in some respects people call it second world, so it's almost on the brink of developing, going between third world and second world, but that largely talks around gross domestic product and the way that it's spread across the population. So the difference in many of these countries is the gap between the rich and the poor is absolutely massive. So you've got the richest men on the planet, largely men on the planet in somewhere like India, and then you've got the Dalit class. And the Dalit class is like who we work with at Foxglove. And in particular, we work in Madras, in Old Madras, which is now called Chennai. And we work with the pavement dwellers. So it's the people who live on the pavement. They're not homeless, which is sometimes what we equate, homeless and pavement dwellers. It's quite a different understanding. So homeless is when you don't have a home. Pavement dwellers is when the pavement is your home. Often 60% of the population have lived there for more than 3 generations. And so they were born on the pavement, they've worked through the pavement, they lived there. But now there's a real drive to move them off the pavement. But the implication living on the pavement, which is quite complicated, is you don't get identity papers. And without identity papers, you're not counted in the census and you don't get access to services. Now, at a time like the pandemic, can you imagine how serious that is? Because there's this huge, this growing numbers, of cases. It's now the second and highest country in the world behind the US. It will overtake the US. I think we're all sure that will happen. It's now nearly, 20.7 million people in India in this probably third wave have now had COVID. Our partners over there have had COVID actually, so they have been very unwell and in hospital. Today, the new cases are 380,000. And that number just now is still growing, it's still increasing. And today there was 3,780 deaths. So that's just, remember, your recorded deaths. So this is not talking about the people who would be in remote communities, and the biggest concern has been that it's moved from the cities and it actually has got into the rural areas. So there would be so much inability to do testing in those remote areas. So our partners, the Sarawati Trust in India, is really reeling under what they can do in Chennai. So what and remember I said this is this class of people who have been pavement dwellers. They don't have their identity papers, so therefore they can't get access to government services, including the dry food supplies or the medical treatment. So I guess what we are doing is twofold. We're putting together dry packs of food, which we can give to the mothers who are in our program. It's about 200 women, and they will feed them. And honestly, as I say these numbers, I just feel so kind of desperate that this is all I can do. But at the end of it, I think what we're all just doing is planning on doing our part. So 200 women and their children. And those packs costing us about $20 per family for a week, so $80 for a month. And that would provide the supplies, because the challenge, of course, is the lockdown. And this lockdown is, I think they're looking at, we're hearing that they've had little eases in that lockdown, which has become a curfew, not a full lockdown, but the discussion is that from next week, they think that the full lockdown may need to happen again. Now, once again, as you can imagine, the people who are the most impacted are the poorest classes, the people who are the poorest people. So what we just need to do is to get them those packs to keep them alive and keep their families fed. Of course, there's no school, and so we're not spending any money on education and those kind of needs right now. But these are, I think they're quite difficult for us to even get our heads around, aren't they? I see people there saying these are, these are people, and it's just like, oh my gosh, when you think of it that, Sally, the whole of Australia with COVID, it's just beyond comprehension, isn't it? And I don't think any of us thought this would happen. At the beginning, no one thought this would be the outcome. I certainly didn't. I was actually in Uganda in January 2020 last year, and I was on my way home, and then there was this emerging, kind of crisis. I thought of this like that bird flu and the swine flu, because I'd actually been coming back to Australia when that was happening too, and people were saying when I went through Doha, you've got to wear masks, and I was like, it's the same thing. It'll be over. We'll be over in a little while. I think what the interesting thing is that this one hasn't been over. So we're now over a year and a half since that time, and we're we're still in just another wave of that kind of problematic treatments, which I don't know. When you think about a population of 1.3 billion, we're trying to get those vaccines rolled out. We can only imagine what's happening to these other countries in terms of that happening. Now, we actually are involved in vaccine treatment though, because from Monday, yesterday, the Indian government has said that vaccines can go to anyone. Before that, the vaccines were being given targeted to the elderly, and they were also going to obviously people who could afford it to pay. And then the people who are frontliners, they were the ones who were in line. But from Monday, they said, we're going to have to distribute this vaccine to as many people who will take that as possible. Once again, the people probably in our group won't have the identity cards to get that, so we'll be arranging for those vaccines. So when we give the $20 packet, really is just dry food. It's just lentils and rice. They'll even in the slums, they're most often the slums are actually on a river, on a bit of a river bank, and so they actually just take the water out of that river and boil it and use that for their cooking, even they're confined to the slums. So they can cook on their really little fires and with coal, mostly with coal. So I just think, it's actually one of those ones that we wonder, I don't think we can do much but pray and wait and see it out there. I remember them saying that swine flu, and this was one of those staggering things to me, is that when they went back in the aftermath of that, and they did a review of how many people had died, they found the numbers to be 5 and 8 times what they'd actually projected at the time. So if you think, I just said about waving and things like that, if I've done a couple of waves, can everyone just accept? So if we can, I know it's a failure of the health system, but if you think about it, it's very difficult now to even, those kind of numbers they've got, how they're ever going to do something about it. We've got in terms of preventative health measures, honestly, it's actually just desperation, and they're going to do anything to get out of their slum communities and actually just get out and keep working. So whilst there's been a huge emphasis of hand washing, that's probably been the biggest one, like giving away, the little packs of for hand washing is being the number one, but also the mask thing is just incredibly difficult, because most of the time, in fact, I was hearing here from a health expert that the biggest way that COVID is spread is actually open air is generally quite low communication in a confined space, but it's actually when eating food. And I guess it's actually the food spittle, and things like that. I mean, not that I spit when I eat, but, maybe other people do. But the kind of concept of food spittle, I shouldn't be laughing, should I? But you know what, you just have to have sometimes a bit of a light moment in the middle of this. But so when people are sitting around eating their meals and sharing their meal, that's actually the biggest time of the communication of the disease. So we will do what we can in terms of the preventative, but I think right now we've actually kind of moved past it. And we're just I think we're all accepting the fact we've got to vaccinate in these large populations. It's going to be it's just going to be a long time before these countries are going to be able to be travelled to. I don't know when I'd be able to travel to somewhere like India. I do, the government's obviously stopped people from India coming into Australia, or really limiting those numbers. So and it's such high density, as you say, Sally. It's kind of, one of those countries that was always going to be the most vulnerable, but I think we all thought we'd kind of missed the worst of it. I think we all thought we're kind of through this. So that's been the real difficulty. Can I actually say, if I move, has anyone got any questions about India? Please feel free just to ask me what you can. Not that I would know everything, I assure you. I am ringing the partners there and speaking to them every day, and just trying to, say what we can do. And really, one thing we've said we can do is just to take on a fundraising aspect for this, for these food packs, and see how we can actually just help the 200 women who have come into Foxglove. Because of course, what we want to do when this is all over is to help them get back set their businesses back up, and to actually re-establish themselves. But yeah, it is very difficult. So if I move to Cambodia, which is the second country that we work in, and in Cambodia, I think again it was another country that we really thought had missed the worst of it. And that country, because they had very few cases, if you look at 2020, very few cases. And in fact, until this year, until the last month, I think we all thought pretty much Cambodia. Now, can we just compare? Cambodia's got about 13 million compared to India's got 1.3 billion. So we have got a very different case. And perhaps potentially, if we think about it like this, a case where we can actually make a real impact. I know we've just always got to think about the thing we can do, but we can actually make a very real impact. So in Cambodia, it was actually back in, I believe, about late February this year, the government let someone come into the country, a group of people who went into a hotel, actually a group of women who went into a hotel, and as a result of that, they got out they got out of the hotel through inappropriate means, and they've become the primary source of all the infections in Cambodia, which is kind of a really sad thing, because now Cambodia is recording about 100 cases a day, 900 to 1,000 cases a day, and this is in the early days. They started the lockdown on April the 5th, so very, very recently. And this has been the first time they've had to have it. Now they've got red zones where the numbers are higher, so they actually are having about 1,000 cases a day, and the number of deaths are actually quite low. But that's the one that's going to be the country, I think, that we will see a lot of impact with. Cambodia's would have very, I would suggest, more numbers able to count them in the rural areas too. It would be very much focused on the cities, although 80% of the people do live in the city in Cambodia. It's more kind of focused in the city areas. So that country really, once again, we're just providing basic food and basic healthcare. One of our person we've got from Australia is Richard Bromley, and Richard actually lives in Cambodia. So he lives in Phnom Penh. If you've been there, he lives near the Russian market, and he's hello Laura. Yep. Are they paid dwellers? Yes they are. Sorry, Laura, they are. We're people we've helped relocate into the slum. So I'm just nipping back to India now. Sorry for people who are listening. We'll come back. But they're people who were living as pavement dwellers, and one of our key things of Foxglove is that we help them to get a permanent address, and the first place they can get that is in the slum, because you can actually lock your door and you've got a permanent address. With that, you can actually register your and get identity card, and then you'll get access to healthcare and other government services, as well as trying to get them. They can they can take a loan from a bank, and they can actually start a small business. So it's not just to get them onto the government benefits, it's actually so they can get access to some funds, because without access to funds, they really are going to struggle to start up a small business and actually do anything that becomes independent for themselves. So they're the 200 women we're helping, Laura, so I hope that answers your question. So when we go to Cambodia, that's with this incident. Apparently this group of women who got out, they became the epicenter of all of these cases, because they went to a wedding, I believe, that had 700 people there. So you've only got to have a few incidents like that happen, and very low, I'd say, preventative measures obviously being taken. Most people thought they were going to they would be fine, and then they thought that, and so that people then really didn't take the steps that needed to back in those early days. So I think the case is there. And if you think about a smaller population, I wonder what the implications will be in Cambodia in the coming months. I'd really like you to, people who have been involved with Foxglove, please stay on top of this, please stay on top of it, because I know that there's such a tendency to turn our heads away, because we think to ourselves, well, what can we do? I just don't think it's the kind of thing we should do. I think that's not what we're asked to do. We're actually asked to participate in that global suffering and care deeply for people. I remember when I actually in 1994, when the Rwandan genocide happened, and for me, I wasn't very involved at all in international aid work, and I was in my car, and this is why I know how it feels like you do want to turn your head away, and I was driving in my car, and I was driving up the, that's great, Laura, and I was driving up Greenmount Hill, actually, with my young son in the back, and on the radio came a reporter who was talking from Rwanda, and it was actually during their genocide, right? And so he's talking about all these massacres and, just think about that. There was 1 million people killed in 100 days. 10,000 people killed every day, and it was all hand-to-hand combat. It wasn't like big bombs being dropped. It was machetes. It was just, you can't get your head around that being the state of that country. But I remember hearing that on the radio, and you know what I did? I think about it now. I just reached across and I just turned off the radio. I just couldn't bear to hear it. I just thought, first of all, I thought, this cannot be happening. Surely this is not true, because the world would be doing something. It was only in retrospect I found the world wasn't doing anything. The world actually didn't do anything. The world did stand by in that occasion. But I remember that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness caused me to just look away. And so now I think, kind of learn something from that. You just don't do that, we just can't take it all on, but we can actually bring what we've got to the table, and we can pray, and we can listen, and we can tell other people the story, and we can encourage other people to give, and we can encourage other people to say, to speak up in their community, and we can encourage other people to speak up as they need to. So I'd be really, asking us to do that as the Foxglove community. So let me move to Rwanda, because Rwanda is kind of, and look, I dare not want to say that it's on the other side yet, because I know what happens. My husband just had COVID. He had trip to Congo, but generally the pandemic has happened later in African countries. Yeah. Isn't that a fantastic thing? Natalie's just saying that because it's been so much through Asia and hitting those countries like the US, Europe, Asia, it's like Africa has not yet really experienced it, and Africa is getting to learn a lot of the lessons that we're really trusting will be preventative if it ever takes off in those countries. Because we work also in Rwanda, and in Rwanda, Sally, what are we doing in Cambodia re-COVID? So in Cambodia we're doing dry packs as well, and they're going largely, we're trying to distribute them at the red zones, which is where people cannot get in and out. But also down in Kompot, which is the area where we've had the schools program, and we've got the young women who are in the university and training programs. So we've got their families and their communities who we're giving is the dry foods. And with them, the great thing about the ones in Kompot is that over a period of now 5 years, we've actually done had a chance to really understand how poverty is measured there and how we can reach those people. So again, we're just doing dry packs and emergency health response. And into those packs we're putting in that we can do the hand sanitizers and those things. They're just trying to contain that spread as much as we can, Sally. So that's what we're really doing there. So that's our Cambodia appeal. So now I get to Rwanda, and Rwanda's had only 40 new cases today and no deaths, and it's really been quite low hit. I think the reasons are generally they said at the beginning the hot temperatures were a bit protective. Secondly, I'd suggest that it doesn't have, even though it's a very clean country. So the people there, ever since they've come out of that genocide, you just can't imagine how clean it is. Just even the pavements are really clean. You go to Rwanda and you're shocked. There's no dirt, there's no rubbish on the sidewalks or anything. People are all, Rwanda is so clean. I mean, they have people there painting the edges of the, curbing, black and white stripes. And it's just a phenomenally cared for country. And I think their attention to health and hygiene has actually been protective for that country. But also what the government has had a leader. It doesn't look a democracy like ours looks like. It's actually worked really well for the recovery of their country. But as a response, if they call for a mandate or a law, everyone just complies. So it's incredibly likely to comply. Imagine India, I don't know, compliance actually works that well. And certainly the history of Cambodia has not been compliant. But Rwanda, they do. So they've had a really low number of cases, really low deaths, and they've also called for everything to be closed. Yeah, but everything to be closed. And so they closed all the markets for months. Now, if you know Rwanda, Grassroots Rwanda Project, what we've banked on is up in the mountains of near Mugabe, which is it's about a 3-hour drive south of Kigali. you get down to this district called near Mugabe, and Burundi is south of us, but not far. It's basically just over another mountain you're into Burundi. So it's been an area that's been traditionally very poor, which is why I said, can we go and help there? So it's been a very poor province or district, and so we started these self-help groups. And what they do is we gather 20 women into a group, and 10 groups for a village. So 200 women who are the total poorest women. They're so poor that we can't promote it in any way other than going door to door to ask them to come, because they can't come. They would never think it's for them. They're not literate. So they wouldn't be able to read an invitation. We have to go out, and we'll go out to where they're living with the animals, out in the banana plantations, and we bring these women in and we say, okay, if you join a group, for 6 months you'll get this intensive training and it'll equip you. And then every week you save, and they save about 50 Rwandan francs, which is equivalent to about 8 cents. But as you save that, it forms, and this is really important for what I'm telling you what you're doing now. So I'm just trying to give you this heads up. So what they do is they form from 8 cents a week from 20 women, is $1.60 a week, right? And they save, and they meet every week. And they do training, and they do community gathering between the 20 of them, and they stay loyal to each other, and they save this bit of money. And over 6 months, they've learned all the skills. So at the end of that 6 months, they take out a tiny loan. And I'm telling you, the average loan is 1,000 Rwandan francs, which is $1.50. So they take out one of these really, really tiny loans, and then using that loan, they start a tiny business, a micro business, which is maybe in a little square area. You just plant tomatoes, and then once you harvest them, you sell them, and that's your business. So they're really micro businesses, and they all do this by trade: petty trade, handicraft trade, and 80% are agriculture. So that's been our businesses. So can you imagine what happened when they closed all the markets? Over this period of time now that we've gone back there, we did a rapid needs assessment in March. Our in-country partner did. They found that really all the groups, because all the groups have savings and all the women are bankrupt. So right now, they've lost everything, right? So we went from having 70% of the women. We've now supported over 20,000 women into these groups, which is kind of out of control, right? Even I can't think that's possible, but it's true. So over 20,000 women are now in groups, but now we've got but all of those women, and right now, at this point, they're bankrupt, right? This is not going to stay that way. This will change. But so right now, we've got women who have got 70%, 98% are feeding their children only 1 meal a day again, gone back to the 1 meal a day, whereas we had 70% were feeding 3 meals a day, and the other 30% were feeding 2 meals a day, and now we've got 98% feeding 1 meal a day. So it's just been a really big hit for those women. And so what the in-country partner we've been talking about, what can we do? What can we do? Well, what we're going to do in Rwanda is twofold. Number one, we're going to keep starting new groups, because now the markets have opened. We're going to start, remember that it costs us $30 a woman. And with that, each $30, it's $600 for a group. And with each of that, we start 10 groups in a village. We have to start with 10 because that's kind of the economy. You have to kickstart a big enough economy that people have got people to sell to and trade with. Otherwise, there's no one to buy your goods. And then what they do is for 6 months, they'll just do training. And we'll have a person going there every week and doing training with them and teaching them and doing community meetings so that the community will accept them. And then they will start groups. But that'll take them 6 months. But then we've got 20,000 women now who are bankrupt. So what they've done though is they've restarted meeting again, which is fantastic. But what we're doing now is we're identifying the 60, we're just starting with groups at a time, and we're going to the 60 groups, which represents 1,200 women who are in the most desperate situation. And they've done that because we've done this rapid needs assessment. And so they're the women who are actually not able to feed, so who are begging or actually asking other members of the community to support them. So what we're doing is we're actually going to fund the savings pot. So what we can put together for every group is about $100, $150 will actually provide the savings for that group of women, 20 women, right? And then they will then start to take loans and immediately start their businesses. Because remember, they've all been through the training. That's why I've got this confidence. We're not going back to ground zero because they already know now how to do it. It's now just reapplying those skills that they did lose, or that they lost the funding for. So now they're going to actually start the businesses again, and they will get going. And I know that when I go back there in a year's time or whatever, they will honestly be going. They will be going okay. They will not, but they will be actually working out really well. But we've got to get these pots of money to them. And the way we're going to do it, and even this is the Foxglove way, which I'm really excited to tell you this because I just love it, is that what we're going to do is our partner over there is made an arrangement with a microfinance group who all these women have got their little bank loans now with, not their bank accounts with. So what we've gone to this tiny microfinance group, and we've said we're going to give the money to them, because they're the ones who the women usually come to, right? We don't have to set up another system for money. But what they can do is they've all got little books which show that they're a member of our group. And the loan goes to the group, not to the individual women. So the group will go there and say, we'd like to take out a loan for $150, right? And because they're part of us, they've already got our money. So then if you think about that $150, between the 20 women, that's the potential pot. They won't loan that much, let me tell you. They'll only start with loaning, $1 or $2, but you want them to build pretty quickly. Sometimes some of them will loan $5. They'll be able to, because they know how to work it. They know how money works. That's one of the big trainings. So they'll never take money they can't manage now. So what we'll do is so then the group will go and take the loan, and then they'll be distributing it in their group meeting like they always do, and they all record it. And then all the women will be going out and running their business, and they've got to pay back that loan. That group has to pay back the loan to the bank within a year, right? Within a year with 2% interest. Now, you might think, oh no, let's not charge interest. No, we do charge interest. This is like what's the beautiful thing, because what's going to happen is as they pay back the loan, we'll be giving that loan to another group, and the 2% interest they've paid, they're going to get given that back to become their little nest egg, so that we can prevent this crisis happening again. We have to say to them, that stays forever as your little nest egg, and we want you to build this nest egg up, because that'll become the security for that group now, that will never have to experience this again. I mean, none of us thought this would happen. We weren't really prepared. So if they can build up to the fact they've got like a $20 little buffer in there, that'll become their security that they can have. Now, I know of groups that had saved up to $200. They actually already had this. But this situation has been so extreme. But what we'll be saying is we need to get that buffer back again. But I love this plan. And I love the fact you love it too, Laura. It actually is a great plan. So, and I feel really delighted that that's what we're like. That's the Foxglove way, is keep being seen. Like sometimes we've got to do that emergency welfare work like we're doing right now in India and Cambodia. And I don't regret it. I think, we just need to help those 200 women in India that we've helped. And we just need to help as many. We've got a number of students. We've got high schools that we've been working in Cambodia. We need to help those families who are in extreme poverty. But I love the fact in Rwanda that what we're doing is we're saying, no, we're gonna just reinvest back into them helping themselves. It may take a bit longer, but I know how quick they move, because once those markets are back, oh no, why is that disconnected? Is it okay? I think it's back on again. I think once we've got those groups, they're meeting again now. Once they know they can access these emergency loans, I know that they will actually get moving really quickly. So I'd just love to tell you that for every time you donate to our Rwanda appeal, $100 to the COVID appeal, that's going to go straight to one of those groups who can actually start loans, immediately. And we've got so I think that one's really exciting. If you've been a regular donor to Grassroots Rwanda, we're going to still keep running the new groups. Because that's also part of it too. We've got villagers who've been waiting now for 2 years to start a group. We don't want to stop that, but we are going to have to press pause a little bit in the speed of it so we can actually help the women who've been part of us. Yeah. It's a good long-term plan, and we do want to have it. That's so true, Sally. So I hope this has been helpful, I hope this has been helpful. I get excited and almost you know, there's a risk of being overwhelmed with need at these points. But, you know, the other thing is I think we should be overwhelmed by the opportunity, because that to me is what this brings us as well. It gives us this chance to show the women who we've loved that it's actually not about us just being there in the good times and loving the fact of seeing the house success, but when things are difficult, we're going to be there too, and we're going to bring what we can to the table, and we're not going to take the power back from them, and we're not going to say we've got all the answers, but gosh, we can make a difference. So I'd love it if you could share this with as many people as you can. I know I do love it. It is community driven, it is community owned, and it really is. You know, one day I'm going to do I'd love to do a documentary on the difference it's bringing and tell the amazing stories of what happens there. But I would love, Tanya, thank you, that opportunity to give. And I you know, I can tell you, every time you give, you get tax deductibility coming up the end of financial year. Tell your friends, you know, but you will feel amazingly great about it. I feel amazingly great. I think to myself, you know, here I am in this time of this risk of being overwhelmed, and I think I know I'm going to be overwhelmed with opportunity. It really is fantastic. So thank you very much for joining today. I had an attempt to have it on my personal Facebook as well, but that went to pot. That doesn't matter. Most important people are our Foxglove supporters, and I really am incredibly grateful for your loyalty and faithfulness, and let's together make something incredible happen. So if you can share this with your friends, tell them, let them know that the money gets directly to the ground. We have about 7.5% costs that we have to spend for governance, which I don't mind at all, because it's actually really important to show great governance and make sure we're being very responsible with the money. But otherwise, all of our money gets to the ground, and we'll be able to give those loans directly to these women. And I, for one, can't wait to see what they show us in return. Because one thing I know is that they're going to show us that they can come through this with flying colours. Let's just do our part to give them a hand. So thanks for being part of it tonight. If you have only just jumped on, go back and watch from the beginning. I hope it's useful. And most of all, I just trust that you guys are well and that your families are well. And at the other side of this, we're going to be better people for it. So thanks for joining the Foxglove Project, and I'll see you all in the future. Please drop me a line. I do actually love having the encouragement from you, or having the questions, whatever it is. Don't hesitate. I'm open to hearing from you, and I never have a problem with people even asking me questions. It's pretty great. So thanks very much, everyone, and I'll see you soon. We went 10 minutes over, which is not bad for me, I assure you. So I'll see you soon, and over and out from Foxglove Project. I want to keep it. I don't know, how do I turn that one off? Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Sue. I'm just trying to turn you off. I'm just trying to make sure I don't lose the video at the same time. So you leave me, so I don't feel like I'm being ridiculous. Okay, how do I do this? Sure you want to.